work, and I had a conversation with my neighbor. She is African. She's from South Africa. And we were talking. She's been in this country about 20 years, and we were talking about the differences of people of African descent throughout the world, throughout the diaspora. And, you know, telling her how my mom, raised in the 60s, my mom was born in 1948, and how racism was for her, and how a lot of people come from out the diaspora, and we hear things like African Americans are lazy and things of that nature. And basically they are going by the things, the propaganda that they are told about us, that are sent out to them. Just like when I was growing up, the propaganda that we heard about Africans is that they were hungry, right? They would show
at the next light, turn right onto the I-10 West ramp to Redlands.
The skinny black children with flies on them. That's what we were told. And so we were told something about them, and they were told something about us. So then we might visit their country with preconceptions about them, and vice versa. It's gone on for centuries. That's just what they do. So I was telling her,
turn right onto the I-10 West ramp.
Sorry, my GPS. I have it on. I know where I'm going. I just like to know what the traffic is. So I was telling her about growing up in Los Angeles in the 80s. I was born in 1974. Growing up in the 1980s, and how they tried to make it look like busing.
In 1,000 feet, merge onto I-10 West.
Busing black children to other schools was this great thing, when in reality, people found out that the inner city kids, the black teachers, were really teaching us. I was in a magnet program in elementary school, and I had books upon books, and I had a really good reading skill, reading level. And the classes I ran had Asian students, had Latino students, and a lot of my friends that were from Belize were actually teaching me Spanish.
Continue
and I
on
knew
I-10
it
West for 31 miles.
very fluently. However, when you don't use it, you lose it, right? And so I recalled to her this one situation I had. So I had a white teacher in second grade. I remember her, Miss Keycut. She was awesome. She taught us origami, and we didn't know it, how to make our own cups, because she would give us like goldfish and goldfish crackers and popcorn and things of that nature. She just did a lot of activities with that opened up your mind. Then I had my third grade teacher, Miss Gray. She was awesome. That's when we learned how to use the dictionary diligently. I mean, you had to look up anything. If you didn't know the meaning of something, she'd be like, look it up in the dictionary. That's how you learned how to research and do things. Then I had a fourth grade teacher, white lady, seemed nice. And I remember I was always in the top reading groups. Back then you had reading groups, they would separate you, and I was always in the top level reading group. Well, for some reason, she said, you're not reading that well, I'm putting you down a level. And I kind of sat there. You don't think anything about it as a kid. You thinking your teacher is protecting you. This is how racism works. And I was with the same kids every time in magnet school. So then I go into the fifth grade. And I'm put into a class that's majority all black kids. I knew all of the kids. We all went to elementary school together, but I wasn't in the same strip of kids in the magnet program. And something was just off to me. I didn't feel like I was learning. So then one day I was in this class, I kept telling my mom, it's my mother being a single parent, and sometimes her view of life was very narrow, because she's like, I'm raising these two kids, so she's doing what she's got to do. And I told my mom once or twice, I said, Mom, something's wrong, something's not right. I'm not with the normal class that I'm usually with the normal kids. She really didn't pay attention. And so one day the teacher, mind you, this is 5th grade, she goes, okay, it's time to take a 15-20 minute break. You guys do coloring or do whatever you want to do. And I sat there, coloring? You're in 5th grade, you 10. You don't do no coloring in 5th grade. All the other kids are like, yay, we don't have to listen to her. We get to do this. But I'm sitting up here like, nah. So I got home and I told my mom, I said, Mom, something wrong. She didn't listen. Finally, I said, Mommy. And she looked at me. I said, something is wrong. And I told her, I said, this teacher had us doing coloring today. And she looked at me and she was like, what? I said, she had us doing coloring. I'm not supposed to be doing coloring in 5th grade. My mother either called up to that school, went up to that school. I was like, you got to get me back into my other class. I was like, I'm not learning, and I'm the kind of person that if you don't have my attention, I will fail. You have to keep my attention. You have to keep me learning. I think that's one reason why I garden and do all these other things. Because if you're not learning, you're stagnant. I didn't know what was going on, but what that 4th grade teacher did was try to derail me. When she said, I'm going to put you down into a lower reading group. And then she shipped me out of that she tried to ship me out of that magnet classroom. That is what racism does. And if I had not been the type of child that I was always curious and didn't question what was going on, because remember, now I've already been all these years used to getting work done, being creative, learning things. If I had been with the other group, I just would have been like, la, 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 and not learning anything. And so I got put back into the class with my friends, and they were like, yay, precious. 6th grade, stayed in that class with my friends, and had my first black male teacher, Mr. Young, excellent teacher. You have to teach our children to look out for things. I always say, because I am Jehovah's Witness, I always say that Jehovah and Jesus had an angel with me. Because there could have been so many things that could have happened to me being raised by a single mother. Tyler Perry said it best on Oprah Winfrey show when he talked about his childhood. He said it's like sharks smell blood in the water. They look for weaknesses, especially with black children, but especially with black male children. There are people out there, and it's not even just about sexual assault. They look for weaknesses. That teacher looked for a weakness. But my mother was the one who always showed up to parent-teacher conferences and all of that. She always showed up. But there are people that look for weaknesses. Out here in California, like in the South, racism is very outright in your face. Out here in California, it's always behind your back, and it's always being stabbed in subtle ways. And I've experienced it throughout my childhood, certain things, through high school. I've definitely experienced racism and prejudice and discrimination within the workplace. So I'm always on guard. But, we just finished Black History Month, and I was explaining this to my friend, my neighbor, who's from South Africa, and she said, wow. I said, yeah. I said, so they were shipping our kids to schools. This is my opinion, and probably some fact if you were to Google it or do a little research on it. So they were shipping inner city kids out of their neighborhoods and putting them in less productive schools, and shipping non-black children, being nice about it, into the inner cities where the children were learning, because I was in a pep oratorical contest. I didn't win because I got stage fright, but I was in this contest. They were doing things. The teachers were very invested in the children during this time period. My cousins were in the GATE program at their schools in Linwood, and I was in the magnet program, and we were doing well. And this started to happen. Then remember, crack cocaine was introduced into our communities. Throughout history in America, when Black communities in any way are thriving, unfortunately, there are people in higher powers that try to dismantle and take it down. I didn't know what this teacher was doing. This is just my personal situation that happened to me. But when I look back on it, that teacher was trying to disrail me. I wasn't getting bused. I was at this school. I'm doing good. And she was a white teacher. And it was just subtle things that as a child you don't recognize. So we as parents have to be on it. I don't have any children, but you know, I have friends that have children, and I have a niece and nephew, and if my niece and nephew need me, I will get to Arizona and be there for them in a minute. If it has anything to do with their education or their safety, I'm just there for, you know, that's my niecey poo and my nephew poo, so I gotta be there for them. But she got a quick little glimpse as to what we have to deal with as being of African Native heritage in America. And she said, you know, Precious, when she went back home, she was telling me what's going on. They think that she's rich. She's like, I'm not rich. You know, because back there, they save money for a house. Come on, I'm in California. If I could save, I mean, it probably is possible. If I could save $500,000 and $600,000 for a house and pay cash, that would be awesome. When I went to Africa, they have loans for house, but guess what? You got to make like one payment a year on the house for 3 years. That's usually like $100,000 a year, and then you pay it off. They don't have 15, 20, 30, 40, and now 50-year mortgages on houses in Africa. It's just different. They just don't do it. So she was like, wow. She said, I didn't realize. I said, yeah. I have another story. I'll go back further. I was a little girl. I must have been about 4 or 5. And the whole family had went to Disneyland, my mom's side of the family. And as a kid, sometimes I would like stare at things. Let's say someone was sitting there, I would be looking at something behind them, but I wouldn't be staring at them. And to this day, my family does not remember. But it was a white man and his son. What are you staring at? And it shocked me. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm not staring at you. I think I was staring at something behind me. You effing nigger. And took a rock and threw it at me and gave me a black eye. And then I started screaming. Now, mind you, I don't think Disneyland had all type of video at this time. If I'm 5, this is like 1980. And gave me a black eye. And my uncles went after him, but they couldn't find him or catch him. I was like, he went that way. Screamed at me. A grown white man and his son. And they got away with it. Even though my uncles, they couldn't find him, and they saw my eye. My uncles are now gone. One of my aunts is now gone. And to this day, they'll probably, and this happens a lot in the African American community, we don't remember that. I remember it. I remember I had a black eye, and then I spent the night at my Uncle Melvin's house, and I think I was still so shocked. I wet the bed. I hadn't wet the bed probably since I was 2-3 years old. I wet the bed. But, you know, a lot of people think, I've had people on Facebook tell me, people that are not black, racism isn't like the way it was. Oh, it definitely is. It's just comes in a different package. And if you think people my age that are in Gen X have not dealt with it, then you have another thing coming. And this younger generation, you better be ready to handle it. Not just pull out your phone and record it. And so my neighbor was actually she was shocked. I said, I'm 52 years old. I'll be 52 years old. And yes, we most certainly deal with racism. And I think the saddest part is that, unfortunately, throughout the diaspora, our distant cousins who are from the Caribbean and other places, unfortunately, all they hear is the propaganda that is put out about us and not the truth. We're very hardworking. We have no choice but to be hardworking. In every single of these United States of America, we have to be hardworking. We are all like Haman. Literally. I've never seen, at least the ones I've been around, too many African Americans that are just sitting there being quote unquote lazy. We're all doing something. But unfortunately, that's the propaganda that is projected out there about us, and it is absolutely not true. And it's very sad, and I'm going on 52 years old, and you get tired. You get tired of seeing it. It's tiring. It wears down on you. It wears down on you mentally. It wears down on you emotionally. So that's when you have to turn to a higher power. You got to turn to God. And me being a Jehovah's Witness is who I turn to, because if I don't, I'll be ready to come out here and snap on somebody. You know, it's sad and it's sickening. And so, but she said, wow, Precious. She said, wow. She said, I think of everything another way. I said, yeah. I said, my mother had to deal with the racism. My mother was arrested during one of the Watts riots, and she had to deal with face-to-face racism in the workplace and in other ways. My uncle, who lives around the corner for me, he said, yeah, I remember if we left Watts, like, there was only so many square foot of city that you could go to in the 60s. He said if you stepped into the wrong city, he said white people would run you out. And this is Los Angeles, California. And if you look back in history and do the research, you will find out that California was actually one of the most racist states during slavery and segregation. Not that they had slavery laws, but yeah. So I'm just telling you my story so that you can see some insight of what we go through on a daily basis. It's and we go through it, I'm gonna say daily, probably not every single day, not every single hour, but we do go through it. And people like to say, oh, we're giving African Americans this. I'm like, you're not giving us nothing. When I bought my house, let's talk about that. When I bought my house, I have never bought a house through FHA or government assistance. I've always got a down payment and purchased property conventionally. Always. Because every time I've tried to use FHA, they say the numbers don't work and yada, yada, yada. And you know what? I like it. I like it better. I'd rather buy a home conventionally. So when I was buying this house, I was trying to do FHA. And dealing with a white escrow person, female. I was out to lunch with one of my friends, and she was like, well, I'm sorry, we can't help you, blah blah blah. And I was like, no. I said, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. I said, because I have the credit, I have the money down, yada yada yada. So they had to switch the lady. I was like, you better freaking figure it out. Said it has nothing to do with me, it has everything to do with you. So they had to switch the lady, and the guy said, well, it works conventionally. Do you have a problem with that? I was like, no. I said, in fact, I prefer it. And then it worked out in my favor because I had my condo, and they were like, oh, you're getting income from this. Yeah, I'm getting income from it. Oh. So then I signed, I think it was like the night before, I'm waiting for them to call me. I was working for another company, and I stayed there till about 6, 7 o'clock at night, waiting for them. Phone was fully charged to call me, tell me when to go sign my papers. Everything in real estate is time. So the lady said, Precious, have you heard from, finally called me, have you heard from such and such? And I said, no, I've been waiting all day. I was told that you guys would call me between such and such a time. Waiting all day. Number one, I'm black. Number two, I'm a single woman, which means I shouldn't have the means. I shouldn't have anything to buy a property. And she said, and I guess she had a nervous laugh, and she said, well, they said that you weren't answering the phone. And I roared. And I said, how dare you? I said, I am a customer, and that lady lied on me. I think it was the same one. I was like, we're gonna have an effing problem. And I don't usually go around and do that, talking to people like that, but I roared. I said, I've been waiting by the phone all day at work. Mind you, I'm sitting near a call center. Somebody looked at me like they wanted me to be quiet, and all these people at work knew me, and they're like, I'm just gonna shut up because I'm about to let Precious go. I roared at that lady for 5 minutes. She was like, I'm so sorry, Miss Carter. I said, I want my documents now. They gave me my documents through email, and then the next day my mom went with me to go do the paperwork to sign, and she was like, I'm so sorry. I said, whoever that is, I said, they need to be immediately fired. I said, that's a lot of money you messing around with just because I'm a single black female. Again, trying to derail you from moving forward. It happens every day. Every day. Blacks are denied loans. Not like we really want a loan. Don't nobody really want to pay a bill, right? But sometimes you need a loan to help you do things. To help you get a car. To help you get a house. To help you fix your roof. Sometimes you need to get a loan. But they will do anything and everything in their power to keep you from doing things. And I feel like I am at times constantly fighting, and it shouldn't have to be that harsh. I have friends. I have a married couple. We both lived in San Bernardino County. I lived in the city in the condo that I now rent out, and they lived in Highland. And so I was selling my house, they were selling theirs. They moved to Orange County, a very high end of Orange County called Rancho Mission Viejo. Her husband worked as an airline mechanic. He's an engineer. Money. She's a registered RN, administrative RN, teaching people. Money. Money. They pay cash for everything. Money. So, of course, they sell their house, and they're waiting to sell their house because they don't want a loan. They want to pay cash for the new house, which I don't blame them. And so they told me the story on how the first thing they asked, well, do you have any liens on your house? And they said, if we had a lien, why would we be looking at another house? And she goes, well, some people do it. Well, if you're in Southern California, Orange County is known for being an area with not a lot of diversity. And in that area, the people that are not of a black descent, unfortunately, tend to get away with a lot. They gave them the hardest time. They come for money, but they had to give them the house. They had to give them the house. And there are people out there, they have 3 and 4 mortgages, paying $25,000 a month for a mortgage they can't afford, paying $3,000 a month for a car they can't afford. But then you want to look at them. They had a Tesla, they had a truck paid for, everything paid for, and you still give them a hard time. So I just wanted to tell you, I just felt like telling you my story this morning and what we go through on a daily basis. I literally had someone on Facebook tell me, well, you know, Precious, we don't need DEI or whatever in the workplace because racism is almost gone. And I said, racism is almost gone for who? For who? I had to go to college and get student loans and get all these degrees just so I can get my foot in the door to get job interviews, to even be considered, and still turned down. I was on this one job, and me and a white man were up for the same job. He got the job. We were both getting our master's degree. I let it go. I go back. They put this man over me. Why? Because they wanted me to teach him what I knew in regards to procurement. But by then, I had already been looking at another job. I move in silence. I read the room. So one of the manager pulls me in. They said, Precious, you're interested in this position. He looks at the job profile and he goes, you know, you're qualified. He said, you basically have done every single detail in this job description except for this one thing, which is do a category plan. This was an Asian manager, somebody that I thought that I could trust. He said, so what we'll do is we'll consider promoting you in a year if you could do this category plan. Now, let me explain something to you. You literally just said that I qualified for this job and you hired someone over me. No one candidate on earth meets every single criteria in a job profile. We're all human. But you literally just said that I was perfect for the role. All I'm missing is this one thing. That's what I told him. And he looked at me and he got shocked. And I said, you want me to do that work for that manager, that category plan, and then you may consider promoting me within a year. I said, no, thank you. And he looked at me. I said, do you realize what you just said to me? See, he thought I wasn't going to catch on. He thought that I was dumb. But I wasn't rude. I said, no, thank you. I'll continue doing the job that I'm doing, because by then I had already gone on some job interviews, and I was just waiting for another entity to give me my start date. And then my mother had her heart attack, and I came back. 2 days after I came back, I was like, here's my 2-week notice. And I had managers and departments coming to me. They said, who's going to do the work? I said, I think the question you should be asking is, why was I doing all of the work for a Fortune 200 company within this department? I said, I think that's your question that you should be asking. When all I wanted to do was get promoted so I can teach my colleagues what I know and why I know it, and to pass on knowledge. Because at this time, I'm 40-something years old. I know I'm getting close to 50, and I know that I am on the downhill trajectory in my career, and it's time for me to pass on knowledge. And they were not even bright enough to catch on to know what I was trying to do. All because I was over 40 and I was a black woman. And the other company I work for, or government that I worked for before this, big issues. I had one director that was just coming after me, and they put 3 investigations on me, and the investigator was a LGBT white male. And he said, you just taught me a lot of stuff. And three investigations, he said, I've told them 3 times that you are doing your job and you are not doing anything wrong. And I had documentation for everything that I did, so they could not touch me. And so I just quietly sat there, did what I needed to do, and found me another job and left. And that's how it goes down. All I can do is my job. I'm trying to get to retirement. All I'm trying to do is take care of my mom, get to retirement, take care of my chickens, take care of my yard. I'm not trying to do anything fabulous. I'm just trying to keep a roof over my head. But people, because of racism and discrimination, will derail you as hard as they can for no reason at all. You've never met them from Adam, but they see that color of your skin and they don't understand, and they wonder why we might have nice cars. We're out here hustling, doing 2 and 3 things just to make sure we have plan A through plan Z. That's all we're trying to do. So anyway, I'm going to stop this video, and I'm going to go on Primsleur and continue learning my Spanish. Over again. And I wish you all have a great day. But I think I just needed to get it off my chest. And I just decided to do it while I'm in traffic, because I'm not going to get to work for another hour or so. Okay, so truly, I do love you all. And when I say find peace within yourself and be peaceable with each other, I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart, because there are things and people that have hated me for no reason at all. And I have had to find peace within myself to push through it. I love you all. Have a good day.